Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to catch up and talk to amazing humans about their experiences with mental health. Today, I'm so happy to introduce this conversation, Alice. Welcome, Alice.
Thanks, Matt. Hi.
Hi, welcome. Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to have you on the podcast. I do want to just put out a warning at the beginning of this. Alice and I will be talking about some pretty difficult subjects. And if you are listening, please do make sure you take care of yourself. We will be talking about suicide in this episode. So please do take care, look after yourself. And if you need a break, take a break, please. So Alice, I will do a very brief introduction to you from my perspective, because as everybody who listens to this knows, I'm really into this conversation of mental health. It's something that I'm really passionate about through personal experiences, and I know you are too. Alice and I were introduced by a mutual connection by another episode of the podcast through Alistair Deards, and he introduced me to Alice. And you know what, once I started to look into what was going on and who Alice was, it was just perfect to have as a guest to this discussion. So Alice, I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'm going to let you do all your introduction because you're an amazing human, and welcome.
Thanks, Matt. So it's great to be on the podcast. Thank you very much for having me. My name is obviously Alice Hendy. I have a background in IT and cybersecurity. And really, I guess the whole essence of why I'm involved and interested in mental health and trying to make a difference is because unfortunately I lost my only sibling, my brother Josh, to suicide on the 25th of November of 2020. So it's still very raw. It was 11 weeks ago yesterday, actually. And a lot of what I'm trying to do at the moment is to raise awareness of mental health, making sure that people are looking after themselves, but also to really create more of an intervention, particularly from an online perspective, in terms of improving the mental health services that are available to people following harmful online searches.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for sharing that openly at the beginning as well. And Ripple suicide prevention, we'll talk about it as as we go through this conversation. And I know you do share your story, and you've written about it in your own blogs and personal writings and so on. So for anybody listening, if you do want to find out more, I'm sure there's a way and a means and a pathway to do that. But Alice Hendy is the name. You'll see it in all the links that are attached to this as well. But let's talk about mental health then. So the big question is the journey with mental health. Now, as I always say, you define what that means to you, but it'd be great to have some insights and some story from yourself.
Yeah, sure. So with regards to mental health from my perspective personally, I was on a bit of a journey with that really in 2020. So it unfortunately ended with a bang with my brother, with regards to his choice to take his own life. But I'd had a tough year already really in 2020. So lots of life changes, a divorce, selling of a house, a diagnosis of a very rare genetic disease, which affects 1 in 100,000 people. So lucky me, amongst other things as well. So it was already quite a tough year, and obviously ended with what my brother did. So my mental health really suffered last year, very badly. I did still manage to kind of function from a work perspective. But there were days absolutely where I would struggle to even do basic tasks like get out of bed or get dressed or make myself a cup of coffee. Just the real kind of necessities of life were a struggle for me to do. And then that really came to a front really when November happened with Josh. And I'm very much on my own mental health journey now, to really try and rebuild what's happened over the last year as a whole, really. And of course, to top it all off, I can't spend any time with friends and family because of the pandemic, which I know impacts everybody. So it's tough. I've got the kind of support that I need, and that's helping me out, counselling. I've got a fantastic network of friends and family that around me that I can call. Yeah. And actually the community that I've kind of established on LinkedIn has been really wonderful as well. There's some lovely people around who have also provided some support to me.
Wow. Yeah. This last year for you, as you say, has just been Yeah, one that I'm sure you would like to forget or do at least wipe out of the memory banks, definitely, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
It was one of those where you kind of question what else could, and how much more can one person have thrown at them, really.
yeah.
But I think I'm just trying to look now at a positive, that things can only get better.
Yeah, well, I don't think you can get too much worse from where you've sort of outlined on that, and with the pandemic and the lockdowns and the restrictions and everything else, you've touched on so many relevant points of that everybody's connecting to at the moment, and of course having that sort of that event with your brother, I'm lost for words really in terms of what I could say to make it better. And how have you found the reactions from the communities and the people that you've spoken to about that event?
That's an interesting question. I think on the whole, people just don't know what to say.
Yep.
They just don't know what to say about something like this, because there is nothing, as you've said, there is nothing really that can be said to make it better.
Yep.
And I think it's the shock. I think it's an aspect of complete and utter disbelief as to what's happened.
Mm.
And people are just very, very sad. They've been extremely supportive to me and my parents, who are obviously living this nightmare day in, day out.
Yeah.
And we're very lucky to have those people, around us and in our lives to try to support us. But it's a struggle. I think people tend to think they need to be walking on eggshells around us a little bit, because we're quite vulnerable.
Right.
And the slightest thing can have an impact on us. We seem to be having a thing at the moment, me and my parents, where every program that we seem to watch has some kind of reference and a connection to what we've gone through.
Right.
And we're finding that really tough. And we all looked at each other last night and just sat there and thought, God, we just can't get away from this. We just cannot get away from it. It just seems that everything around us reminds us of the event, really.
Yeah.
And that's a struggle. So I'm hoping that eases and gets a little bit better with time.
Mm-hmm.
But at the moment, it's very raw, and it's tough.
And and as you said at the beginning, and so thankful for you to be talking to me about this, and to anybody that's listening as well. This was only 11 weeks ago, wasn't it? And it's still very close to the event itself.
It is. 11 weeks
That's not long,
really, is it? And in many ways it feels like yesterday.
Yeah.
And in some ways it feels like years ago. And of course, it's also a case of sorting out all of the things that you have to do following the death of a loved one.
Yeah.
Which, with to no detriment to my parents, I've had to do.
Mm.
So a lot of that has fallen on my shoulders. And you're kind of putting together pieces of the jigsaw, if you like, in terms of Josh's life and what was happening in his life in the lead up to the event, which has also actually been quite disturbing.
Right.
And hard, and really hard to deal with. That the amount of phone calls that I've made to all of the insurance companies, DVLA, all of the different banks, payday loans, it was just relentless. I've made hundreds and hundreds of calls in the last 11 weeks to try and sort everything out, and that has also taken its toll.
Yeah. And that's all whilst you're trying to grieve and to go through, and process all these things that are going on and the thoughts.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So it's for me personally trying to grieve myself, but also to try and support my parents, who understandably are broken, to be honest with you.
Mm.
And obviously try and set up a charity as well. So I've kept myself busy. But I'm still very much grieving and still very much processing what's happened, and I think I will be for a long time.
Yeah. And well, I can only imagine, but the impact's going to be there forever. It will hopefully become easier to think, positively about what's happened in the future at some point. But right now it's raw. It's recent, isn't it? Are you okay to talk a little bit about what happened? Are you okay in terms of
Yeah.
what did you see any signs? This is the big thing, that people struggle with is, were there any signs, warnings, really anything that you would have seen?
Yes, is the answer to that. So Josh had struggled with his mental health, and made it quite apparent that he was struggling with his mental health. He was on medication. He was going through counselling. He was under review by the local mental health team run by the NHS. He had some amazing friends around him, of which I have, seen some of the supportive messages myself after going through things like his phone.
Yeah.
They were always there for him at any point. He had a family that loved him beyond belief. Don't get me wrong. We as brothers and sisters do, we had some tough times. We really did. He made decisions that I didn't agree with.
Yeah.
And being the person that I am, unfortunately, I told him how it was. And I was honest with him, but that was because I loved him and because I wanted what was best for him. It was never a case of me just getting on him. If there was something that went wrong, I wanted to make him learn from that so that it didn't happen again in the future. And I just wanted what was best for him, as older sisters do. And it was the same kind of relationship with my parents as well. So he did have, warning signs. He actually was, the last time I met up with him, I bought him a drink down the local pub, and he was actually very, very blasé about attempting to take his own life, basically. Okay. So, he said, "Oh, how are you? How are you doing?" Because he knew that I was going through a tough time. I just got my divorce through. I just moved back in with my parents. And he was asking, how I was, and I was telling him, and I said, "Right, and how are you? How's work? What's going on?" And he was very, very blasé in the fact that he said, "Yeah, I'm fine, but I tried to take my own life last week, but other than that, I'm fine." And it was just very, like it wasn't really a big deal to him. And I was obviously horrified at that and said, "Josh, what are you talking about?" And he was telling me that he'd made an attempt on his life via an overdose.
Right.
So, it really took me by surprise, and I immediately gave him links and support to mental health, networks to help him. And I said, "Call me at any time." "Yeah, okay, yeah, I will, that's fine," And clearly it got progressively worse. But just 11 days before he did it, he told my parents he was the happiest he's ever been.
Really? Right.
So there's clearly a big cover up, really, with much of it. But am I surprised? No.
Was there a point where it could have changed, do you think? What could have changed to support him differently, or?
Matt, I don't think there was.
No.
I really don't think there was. I think he was intent, just absolutely intent on doing it.
Right.
No matter how much support and love and advice and guidance was given to him by so many people that I've read with my own eyes.
Yep.
He just wouldn't take it and was set on his decision, basically. And it was very planned. It was very, very well thought out and well planned, which shows me that he was absolutely set on his decision.
Yeah. Yeah. That's difficult, isn't it? Because, it's that held, can we stop somebody at that point from taking that option, which is a very final option? There is nothing else, is there?
No, that's it. And I think, with regards to Ripple, it became apparent that Josh had been researching ways and means to take his own life.
Yeah.
In quite a significant level of detail, actually.
Right.
Online. And because obviously that's my kind of area of expertise, I wanted to explore what came up on, search engines and so on, when you actually search for things of that nature.
Yeah.
And what comes up, to be quite frank, is not enough. It's nowhere near enough. It's got a Samaritan's helpline number that comes up right at the top. Okay, great. But it's in black and white. It's not particularly very eye-catching for somebody who's in crisis mode, and it can easily be scrolled past. And the other big part of this is that there is no alternatives to the phone call, the phone line.
Yep.
What about people who want to text or web chat or download an app? There's no signposting to those amazing charities that provide that. And so I do sit here and, of course, when something happens like this, you're always thinking, what if I could have done this, I should have done that. But I do think, if Josh was given a bit more of an option and a choice online with regards to the support available to him, would he potentially have taken it? I don't know. And unfortunately, I'm never going to know the answer to that.
No.
But what I can do is make that change so that other people can get that help and that other families don't experience what we're currently going through.
Yeah. Well, I find it incredible, the energy that you're able to give to this sort of thought that says, right, I need to do something to try and, as some part of this process that people go through, to try and support people at any point that I can. And this point, of course, from your background experience within cyber and security and things like that, you're the perfect person to understand what that looks like. And so let's talk about that then. So Ripple is formed off the back of, the tragedy and loss of your brother. So what have you been doing? So let's talk about sort of the thoughts that you had around what that could deliver and give support to people.
Yeah, so it really was that interception, really, and providing that range of different mental health support options immediately when people are searching for harmful content online. But really importantly, making it visible before the search results are actually presented to them.
Okay.
So people have to physically click off of it to see the search results, which at the moment doesn't exist. So it's much more really of an interception between a search and then the results being viewed, which I think will have a huge difference. And it's obviously a real push and a promotion of the amazing mental health charities that exist in this country that aren't really being promoted as much as they should be, to provide users with more of a choice as to what works best for them with regards to their mental health. Samaritan's number is great, but it just isn't enough anymore. And more needs to be done. So I've set up this charity, I guess, in about 6 weeks. I said to you before we came on the recording, I've created a monster. I didn't expect anywhere near the amount of traction that this has got. It's quite overwhelming, actually, and it has almost been a bit of a full-time job for me, to be quite honest with you. Most of the legwork has now been done, and therefore it's now really a case of me just continuing to have really in-depth, meaningful conversations with technology companies, mental health charities, and so on, to actually get them to implement this. So I've managed to get in for a meeting with Google and Samaritans as well, who obviously have that relationship with Google already. Everybody's just been so receptive and actually really supportive of what I'm trying to do, because there's a real need for this. And it really is a bit of a no-brainer. And I often sit there and think, God, why hasn't this been done before? It's such a simple idea, and I don't understand why it wasn't implemented years ago. I feel
any ideas why that might be, though? Any thoughts why that might not have been done?
I think if I've got to be careful here, haven't I? I think if I'm honest, a lot of the kind of tech companies, mentioning no names, have been very precious about keeping hold of their services without collaborating.
Right.
And I think that is now starting to change. And that's starting to change because governments are now really coming down quite heavy on tech companies. We've got the online harms paper, which has come out, which is very relevant. Samaritans have also come out with a list of recommendations that they believe should be implemented. Of which, by the way, Ripple fully aligns with those recommendations. So I've actually provided a solution to their recommendation.
Brilliant. Yep.
And I think now they're almost being forced into having to collaborate and make a change, because there needs to be one. Brilliant. And it needs to be a dramatic one.
Yep. And so do you see or foresee anybody that wouldn't support this? Who do we need to chase after to make sure they get on board?
All of the search engines need to get on board, all of them. Internet service providers need to get on board. So whoever you have your broadband with, please get them to talk to me.
This is a plea to everybody out there listening.
It is.
What's the wish list that we need to get this implemented? Because it needs to happen.
And if we all push for it, then we might get somewhere, you know. I think the other one to push is actually for the browsers as well. So whatever browser you use to go online, I think that's also another way in as well. So they're really on my hit list, if you like, at the moment. And I'm going after all of them on a daily basis at the moment. And as I said to you before we came on, I'm not stopping until they implement this, however long it takes.
Yeah, well, that's to be commended and applauded. Is let's get after this and make sure this sort of gets implemented into the system. I just want to just touch a little bit in terms of the sort of the technicality of one piece, which is fascinating for me, which I'm sure people listening would like to know. So what words would trigger this pop thing that would come up and block whatever you're trying to see? What sort of words would you envisage would be search words?
So it already has this functionality actually in place already. So if any terms were searched for in Google that relate to anything really to do with self-harm or suicide, and that could be things like questions, phrases, sentences, so on. Then the Samaritan's number is presented at the top search results. So they already have functionality there. And my proposal is that essentially what currently exists is being replaced with something more forceful that can't be scrolled past. So we're talking about, look, if we give the example of my brother, it would be things like how to tie a noose, as an example. But obviously, there's unfortunately many different ways that people research and techniques that people research, and therefore the tool would flag up if any of those terms or phrases are searched for. And would that sort of build a profile then of different ways that people would ask things? Is that how that would work? I'm not a technical person, by the way, as you can probably tell from the way I asked the question. The answer is yes, basically. So in terms of the kind of data that I'd be able to capture from this tool, it's really important for me to kind of get out there that there would be no personally identifiable information captured here whatsoever. Because it's a very, very personal topic. And it just would go against everything that I'm trying to do. So the only information really that I'm interested in capturing is what's being searched for. And if you like, the popularity of those searches, which will inform mental health organizations and charities in terms of how they're going to tailor their content accordingly, actually, from that. How many people have clicked on each of the charity partner buttons? So is text more preferable than calling? Is calling more preferable than the web chat? How many people have clicked on the downloading of an app or accessing resources? And that's really important to see as well, because we'd be able to actually then determine what ways people prefer to communicate to seek mental health support, which is really, really useful. I do also have a part of the tool at the bottom right, which says continue to search results. And as much as that pains me, I have to include that in there, because
Sure.
unfortunately there are always going to be individuals who are intent on looking at this stuff.
Yep.
And therefore I can't interfere with their free will. You know, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to provide more of a choice and an intervention before they get there. And also provide a message of hope, which is really prominent on the top of my tool as well.
Okay.
It's a message of hope and encouragement, which again currently doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's, well, it sounds incredible when it just sounds like, you know, you're right, you can't stop people from doing the search, but if you can at least, you know, engage with somebody at a point where maybe they don't realize there's options, or they don't, and that's one of the things when I talk about mental health with people training, you know, we always assume the options are really limited. There's not many people that will talk to me, I need to see a doctor, or I need, and it's not true. There's so many resources available, right?
There's so many. And you know, I'm very lucky in the fact that I've got some really well-known charities that have now officially come on board with me for this. So Calm, the campaign against living miserably, they've come on board. So for their web chat service, they're on the tool. Young Minds have come on board for their messenger service. I've got Grassroots Suicide Prevention. They've come on board. They're a huge one. And they've got the Stay Alive app, which is brilliant. And Jacob's 1 Million Lives tool as well, which is almost like a self-check-in tool, and it comes up with a bit of a dashboard at the end.
Okay.
Nice. So 4 big ones there.
And
I'm obviously liaising at the moment on a regular basis with the likes of Samaritans, Papyrus, Shout, and so on. So the aim is that all of them get on there eventually. But yeah, conversations ongoing, but I'm pleased with the progress it's made so far.
Brilliant. And all of those charities that you've outlined have a wonderful sort of support service that they provide to people, and it is reminding people that it's not just about Samaritans and a doctor, it's about many organizations that exist today for exactly that purpose. How global is it? How could we evolve that globally? Is it straightforward?
Good question. So to make it global, it is absolutely doable, but we would have to have some kind of functionality in the back end of the tool, which picks up the user's location. And the reason for that is based on their location would determine what mental health charities are presented on the tool. I have received interest actually from other countries to roll this out. So the US have been are interested, and Australia, Japan, who have a serious issue with suicide, and the Netherlands. Actually, so have all expressed an interest of rolling out the tool in their country. So I'm also trying to work with, you know, international mental health charities as well in order to get it out there. But obviously at the moment my focus is on the UK. I'd like to get it rolling out here first, and then, you know, perhaps it might be easier to roll it out globally. But the language barriers are proving to be quite entertaining at the moment for me.
I can imagine. You know, I have people listening to this from all over the world who have been on this podcast as well. So if anybody can encourage their local resources or their local governments to get involved, please do.
Please.
You know, suicide is a global issue, and that's a reality, right? 800,000 people a year tragically end their life through suicide, which means we all have a role to play in supporting this. Alice, we're coming towards the end of this, and I want to just keep talking to you because you're such a fascinating character, and of course you've got an amazing story that you're telling. So final thoughts, really, you know, I'd love to think you've got a message you can share with people just to sort of think about things a little bit differently, or provide some support or hope, you know, in terms of what you're doing. And I applaud you. I love everything you're doing, and I just want you to be a success with all of this. You know, I'll be there to support along the way too. So Alice, final thoughts?
Thanks, Matt. I think really my final thoughts are there are always support. There's always support available, however bad it gets, and there's always a way to improve your situation. So utilize what amazing charities there are out there, utilize your friends and your family who all love you, and you'll get through it.
Lovely words. And for everybody listening, I hope you've managed to stay with the conversation, because it does have hope in it as well. There are ways we can help support each other better. Alice has told her story, which unfortunately has tragedy in there, and it's such a horrible thought that you've had to go through this experience to bring you to where you are now. And I wish you all the very best for you and your parents, all the very best, and send lots of love and energy towards you, to get through these challenging days. If anybody is struggling, if you do need extra support and help, of course, there are many organizations. We've talked about so many on the, during this recording. Samaritans, of course, if you do need some urgent support and help, always there, pick up the phone, 116 123, if you do need extra help. But there's lots of other organizations too. No, you're not alone. I think that's the most important message we can send as well. Somebody cares. We all care, actually, about other humans when they're suffering. So that's it. That's the end of this recording. Alice, you're an amazing human. I send you so much love and energy to you and your family, and wish you all the very best with Ripple suicide prevention. Please, everybody, get behind it, support it, follow it, whatever it is that you can do to raise the noise. But let's get some more help and support out there for those who are struggling. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt.